Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the African Comic Guy. We're back today to talk about Rebel Moon. That actually coincidentally came out yesterday, just as Aquaman and the Last Kingdom came out, and I did a review of that movie yesterday. And I watched Rebel Moon today. I thought I'd watch it yesterday, but I got preoccupied. It actually came out after 10 p.m., I think Eastern. But I did watch it today, and this was an outstanding movie. You know, Zack Snyder, who directed this movie, he's one of my favorite directors. And again, this is not coming from a bias point, but this was a really good movie. Really good movie. There are aspects of the movie that were okay, not good. And then there were some parts of the movie that were just outstanding because it's Zack Snyder. And I came off really excited about part 2 and 3. You know, this is part 1 of a trilogy, and this movie was just under 2 hours and some change, which was surprising because Zack Snyder typically has longer movies, but it was fun. So we're about to talk about this movie and really get into how cool this universe that he's creating is. So let's talk about Rebel Moon. So for those of you that don't know, you know, Rebel Moon has been a project that Zack Snyder has been working on for so long. Actually, this was a script that he actually pitched to Lucasfilms for like the Star Wars universe. And I guess either they didn't agree with it, they didn't like it for some reason. I don't know what their issues or differences were. But if you listen to Zack Snyder, this is a project that's been near and dear to him. He's wanted to really do this for so long. And we're so glad, coming from the DCEU universe, where he got so much trouble with the studio, not really allowing him to do what he really wanted to do. And that was really giving the fans what he believed the fans really wanted to see. And we loved everything he put out from, you know, and the first time I watched any Zack Snyder anything was Dawn of the Dead, you know, when he launched that universe, which obviously Army of the Dead, that came on Netflix, I think last year. And then moving from there to 300, to Watchmen, right, to Sucker Punch, which actually fell under the radar. If you don't know what Sucker Punch is, it's a really, really cool movie you guys should watch. And obviously, and then moving into the DCEU universe, and we've talked about that in our great length, what he's done for that universe, and how obviously we feel cheated because we know there's so much more he could have done with it. But needless to say, when it came to Rebel Moon, I think he chose a partner as far as a studio that would allow him to really tell a story the way he wanted to do it. And here comes Netflix, and they give him basically the keys and allow this man to showcase his vision when it comes to this universe, the Rebel Moon universe. And now if you watch this movie like I watched it, you're going to see aspects of these movies that resemble Star Wars, right? Visually, right? It's an empire. People are fighting against this evil empire, right? Just like Star Wars. But I think unlike Star Wars, you really get into characters, right? And he actually now brings in certain characters, and you fall in love with these characters because you can actually see how these characters actually connect and have a way of really empowering this movement, especially the lead character in Rebel Moon. I remember the first time I saw, well, I don't know if it was the first time I saw her, but I saw her in the recent Mummy movie that with Tom Cruise. I really didn't do well, but she was really a good actor. And in this movie, you could tell, you know, that she really fit the character that Zack was really trying to portray in this movie. You know, she really, without really giving out any spoilers, this is one of those movies where she's gathering, the entire movie is basically trying to get these people who are rebelling against this evil empire. And she's trying to get fighters, right? So they're moving from one place to another, one planet to another, really trying to find people who will actually now get involved with this rebellion. And it's a rebellion against this, again, this evil empire. And it really, I like the visuals of Zack Snyder. You really love how he shoots his movies. And at the same time, you love the dialogue, which means they were really meticulous when it comes to their storytelling. The dialogue works. These actors and characters in these movies play well along each other. So you don't feel like either one stepping on anybody else's toes. You don't feel like there's anybody here who doesn't really belong. You kind of feel, this really gels together. And it's really surprising coming from a year where we've had some really, really bad movies overall. It's really refreshing to see a director showcase everything he wants. Again, this was Netflix giving him total freedom, really trusting this man to really come out with a great movie. And he did. Now, cool thing about this movie is everybody's badass. I don't know if you've ever watched any Zack Snyder movie, but they are badass. People are badass in these movies. The fight scenes, the angles, the slow motion. I know people have complained over the past that he has a lot of slow motion in a lot of his movies, but funny enough, they always work. So even in these movies, especially in fight scenes, when something's just about to happen, there's like this intense slow motion effect. And it works. It didn't feel overwhelming. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you watch a movie and something is done too much, and you're like, yeah, nah. This really felt right. And at the same time, I think one of the things you recognize a lot of, especially coming from the DCEU universe, is a lot of his characters, heroic characters, have this presence. It's like. And I think it's just his way of showcasing them. He gives them presence, right? So you see them, you almost feel them, right? They come off the screen and you're like, I really want to see this. And then when he showcases his villains, the same thing. He has this way of, really shooting and you being able to maybe not like these villains, but really engage with them. I remember watching this movie and one particular villain. Oh my God, I've never wanted to see somebody die so bad. Like one villain in this movie, and I mean, you're gonna have to watch and see because I was rooting from the beginning. I'm just like, when can this person die? When will this person die? Because I mean, damn, So, but it's fun to see. It's really fun to see when he actually tells these stories and then you're super engaged in either these heroic characters or even the villains. But he actually has a way of showcasing everybody very well, right? The storytelling. I think the plot always follows everything that he tries to put out. And it was really fun. And I honestly do not have a lot of negative issues with this movie. I kind of feel it reminds me of watching, the Dark Knight trilogy when Batman Begins. I think people always admit that their favorite movies in that trilogy were The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. But this movie makes you feel like Batman Begins. Like you sit there and you're like, this movie's good. Now I'm not gonna call it great yet. I think it might move into greatness as we see the sequels to this movie. But that's the feeling I got. Like when you're watching, even as a comic fan, I remember watching Batman Begins, but then I remember watching The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight basically, it was leaps and bounds ahead of Batman Begins. Not to disrespect Batman Begins, it was a really good movie. But The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, they were great movies. There's a reason why both made billions. So that's how I really felt about Rebel Moon. So I really believe that given the success of this movie, because a lot of fans are loving it, critics are liking it, I think we're really going to end up with a good rest. Because I think he's already shot part 2. I don't know if he's shot part 3 because I think it comes out in April 18th, if I'm not wrong. I can't wait to see where they go because again, as this movie progresses, you get you get super involved in this fight that these guys are in, and you really want to see where they go. You know what I mean? There's a moment in the movie where they're all captured. Again, this isn't spoiler, and you're like, man, really? We were just building up. We were just really all of them. Oh man. But you gotta watch to see what happens. So in conclusion, again, I don't really have a lot to say when it comes to this movie because this was really a good movie. It was a really good movie. The CGI was outstanding. I mean, Zack Snyder. You know that this man is very, very, very good at really making sure that any part of CGI, because a huge part of this movie was CGI, that a lot of it is really crisp, is really nice. Is I think the visually he wants to captivate you with what you see. You know what I mean? Because again, this coming from this universe that resembles the Star Wars universe, it's CGI, but he just has a way of just making you believe these are locations, right? There's some scenes where they're walking and you see mountains in the back, and you're like, that looks like Colorado. It looks like Colorado. Well, this part looks like they're in the Sahara Desert. You know what I mean? Like they're visually, you're like, these look like places I've seen before. That's how good. When you see these animals, you're like, even though these are alien animals, you're like, wait, that ain't CGI. That no way, really? That's not C. You know what I mean? You're battling with this in your head where you're like, this looks too real, and that's one of the really cool things about Zack Snyder. And one of the cool things that I think Netflix allowed. Again, he didn't really have a big budget. This was not like a DC movie where you have hundreds of millions of dollars to go into a movie. Netflix gave him a budget. I think that budget was maybe 50 million, if I'm not wrong. Again, don't quote me on this. It's just from what I'm trying to remember. But when